everyone, welcome back to my channel. This is video number 2 in this new series that I'm doing. I'm looking over here instead of at you. Sorry, I'm looking at my little viewfinder. Anyway, welcome back to my channel. And as I started to say, this is number 2, the second video in this new series that I am doing on clarifying different genres of music. Now, in today's video, I want to specifically talk about jazz as compared to what we know as R&B. So, let's start with jazz first of all. Okay, so let's start with jazz. Jazz can be defined as a type of music of Black American origin, characterized by improvisation, syncopation, and usually a regular or forceful rhythm. It emerged in the early part of the 20th century, so back in the early part of the 1900s, early part of the 20th century, around, I'm trying to say 1920s, around 1920, 1930s, right around that time, closer to 1930s really, but really somewhere around in there. Further definitions state things like, where was I looking? Oh, I know. Things like some of the stylistic aspects of jazz music include intricate propulsive rhythms, polyphonic ensemble playing, which means ensembles that have lots of different, poly means many, so lots of different aspects and different parts going on. Ensemble playing, improvisational, improvisatory, virtuosic solos. Tongue twisters, I apologize. Anyway, improvisatory refers to improvising. A lot of improvisational music goes on in jazz, and that's one of the key characteristics of jazz music. And virtuosic or virtuoso solos. So keep that in mind. When we say virtuoso solos and you listen to real and true jazz music, you're listening and hearing things where, like, different instrumentations. A lot of times people don't include vocal music in this, but I most definitely would, and as do some others. But you can include vocalizations as well as the playing of various instruments, in which the person who is soloing and improvising and doing these virtuoso solos, they really just take off and are able to do all kinds of amazing things against the backdrop of the underlying music that the rest of the ensemble is playing against that solo virtuosic improvisational part in the song. So keep that in mind in terms of jazz. Now, R&B. In terms of defining R&B, first of all, it's R&B. Let's put it this way. Let's start at the beginning. R&B stands for rhythm and blues, in case you didn't know. So it stands for rhythm and blues, and that actually is a marketing term. It came out of a situation back in the 1940s, 30s, 40s, in which they needed to change the wording that they used to market Black music to the general public. So, in the 1930s or so, rhythm and blues music, it was first introduced, it was used in the 30s, but was first introduced in the general public like right around the late 1940s. The name's origin was created for use as a musical marketing term by Billboard magazine. In 1949, then Billboard reporter Jerry Wexler created the term for Billboard. Why did he create a term or need a term to designate Black or African American made music, or created a term for African American or Black American music that was being created? Well, the reason is because the wording that they used previously to describe and designate where they were placing Black musicians on the music charts had become considered offensive, What was the term that they used before this guy came up with R&B to market black music, you ask? Well, the term that they used before that was called race music. Any music that a black person did in those days, 1930s, 1940s, even 1920s, they kind of slapped with this label, race music. And who is they? I'm talking about people in the marketing side of it, and Billboard magazine and some of those others. So, this guy, Wexler, he came up with a term for Billboard magazine to designate upbeat, popular music performed by African American artists that combined blues and jazz together. The rhythm and blues term was created to replace the designation of race music, which, as I mentioned, which until that time frame was how they referred to upbeat music by black folks. So by that time it was becoming, people were considering it offensive. Probably folks may have considered it offensive before then, but they changed it. So in this day and age, particularly since the 1970s, rhythm and blues has also become a catch-all term for, soul music, funk, all kinds of other quote-unquote music by quote-unquote black. The quote-unquote's not for the music, but for the black part. Quote-unquote black and African-American artists. And the reason I put quotes around that is because they're looking at the color of the skin and the background of the person who is singing it to give this designation, rather than looking at the parts that make up the song itself. And I'm not saying you can't look at both. You can look at both, but it was more so looking at the background of the person producing the music as opposed to the elements of the music itself. One other thing I mentioned too, while we are dealing with the definitions, and that is, as far as rhythm and blues, the meaning behind the rhythm part of rhythm and blues comes from the music's typical dependence on 4-beat measures or bars, and it uses a steady backbeat. And what they mean by that is like a strong emphasis on the 2 and the 4, or 2 or the 4 accented beats. So now we have our definition straight for rhythm and blues and for jazz. Okay, now that we have our definitions straight, let's do some demonstrations. All right, let's start with jazz first and foremost. Remember, key elements of jazz music are a heavy reliance on virtuoso solos and improvisation, a lot of improvisation. Now, you'll notice I didn't say anything about how fast or slow the song is. I didn't say fast solos or slow solos. I just said or fast improvisation or slow improvisation. I just said improvisation. So I want you to keep that in mind also, because as I mentioned in the very first video in this series, a lot of times one of the mistakes people make is they hear the tempo change. So they say, okay, it's a slow song, so it must be jazz. But nowhere in any of these definitions, for jazz anyway, did we talk about tempos. Jazz music can be upbeat, and it can be a slow beat, and it can be a moderate beat. So that part, how fast or slow it is, which we call the tempo, has nothing to do with whether or not we call it a jazz song. We call it jazz if there's improvisation in it. There may be a steady rhythm underneath it, but there's also a lot of different sounds going on at the same time, etc. So, keeping that in mind, here is an example of a jazz solo on the piano. Okay, now, sounds fantastic. I'm gonna keep that going for a minute. Okay, that's by Michael Gundlach. It's a video that he put up, and I'll put a link below for his music. He's doing a fantastic job, love it. But he is improvising. That means he's making it up as he's going, utilizing, he knows what key he's in, the song is in, he's staying within the key and all of that. But around that, he is improvising. So he's doing a fantastic job with that. All right, so that's an example of an improvisational solo that in jazz music It's on the piano, but it could be on any instrument, and I include voice as definitely as well. An excellent example of vocal improvisation you can find lots of places. One of the most famous, of course, is the great Ella Fitzgerald. Now, if you have never heard the great Ella Fitzgerald do her thing, she's amazing, amazing musician and vocalist, and she just did impossible things in terms of improvisation. So if you've never heard her, this is a little sneak peek at the great Ella Fitzgerald. I'm kind of going back, but couple things to notice about that. First of all, she's doing a virtuosic improvisational solo performance. So you can hear she's got the backdrop of her band, lots of horns, a lot of polyphonic sounds with lots of different sounds going on, and she's soloing. She's improvising all over the place. Second thing to notice, though, also is the tempo. It's an upbeat, fast beat song, and did I make it loud enough for you to hear it? Let's play a little more. So that is the famous song, It Don't Mean a Thing Unless, I'm sorry, It Don't Mean a Thing If It Ain't Got That Swing. I apologize. I'm in a hurry. I'm about to run out of here in a few minutes, but I want to finish this for you. Anyway, yeah, that's the famous jazz song. It don't mean a thing if it ain't got that swing. And you notice how it's the fact that it's an up-tempo song. So here's what I want to leave you with. two key things. First is, as we did, we defined R&B and we defined jazz. So we get a little clearer idea of the differences between the two. And then I, gave you these examples. So the two things to keep in mind to take away from today's lesson, today's video, is that number one, tempo, meaning fast or slow, has nothing to do with whether or not a song is considered a jazz song. And the two examples that I happen to play for you today, both were up-tempo, fast-paced songs, and they're also jazz songs. So, as you can see. So, therefore, from now on, don't assume, and tell your friends too. Tell your friends and family. The next time you hear somebody say, oh, if they hear a slow song, oh, it must be a jazz song. Next time you hear someone say that, let them know what you've learned today. Well, no, just because it's a slow tempo or a ballady sounding song doesn't mean it's a jazz song. It could be, but that's not what makes it a jazz song. So that's the one thing I want you to take away today. And the other thing to take away today from today's discussion is that jazz has a heavy emphasis on improvisation and making up the elements of the song as you go along live in the performance. Yes, you have a particular key that you stay in. There are aspects that stay the same, that your ensemble or your band, helps support you by staying in that key and everything. But then you as the solo artist can take that key and then improvise all over the place. So you're not just playing any old thing. You got to make sure you know your theory in order to be able to give a good improvisational solo performance. Okay, so that's our discussion on the jazz side of the comparison between jazz and R&B. When I come back to you again, we shall explore the R&B side with examples of what we listen for when we listen to rhythm and blues. In the meantime, God bless, take care, enjoy the rest of your day today, whatever you might be doing, and comment below. Love to hear from you, and I try to do my best to respond to all the comments. Give me a like and subscribe. Love my new subscribers. Welcome. Mwah. Love the folks who have been with me. Mwah. Thank you for staying with me. And I'll bring some more good content to you next time around. Oh, one last thing. The giveaway contest is still going on. So you have a couple more days left. look at the previous couple of videos to get the details and information about that. Okay, talk to you later. Bye. And I'm going to go to a violin diva rehearsal. See you later. Bye-bye.